While I don't directly think anything has got to do with the child, it's the parenting that becomes the most important. So
Psychological behavior for any kid.
where you can't really go see a counselor, and then you think something's wrong with you. Not just that it's come out of me. It's not just that feeling. It's acceptance, right? We talk about it all the time, but honestly, I think we all live in
Across an incident where Instagram has
years back. There was this game that kids were playing where
Sudhakar.
Hi, Ms. Sudhakar.
Welcome to Go Make a Difference. Thank you so much for taking your time today. We know what kind of a personality you are and who you are. Could you please tell the audience also about yourself?
Thank you so much for inviting me. Never done a podcast before, so quite interesting, and it's amazing what you guys have set up here. So I'm Nirupama Sudhakar. Okay. So if it comes to my education, I've done my master's in cognitive neuroscience and master in social work as well. But along the way, I've done a lot of parental counseling, right? So that's sort of like my forte. So anything to do with children, while I don't directly think anything has got to do with the child, it's the parenting that becomes the most important. So for me, that's where I get the inspiration, or that's where I wanted to kind of focus on this area, because what the child becomes is what you kind of sow in as a parent, right? So that's what keeps me close to this sort of field, and that's what I do. And more than anything, I'm just happy to be here today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's absolutely a pleasure to have you here with us today. So jumping in directly to the topic, right? So let's start off with counseling and psychology, that being your forte, like you said. So how important is psychological behavior for any kid?
Right. So just taking a step back, right? A lot of people don't really understand mental health as part of being who you are, right? We're all always taking care of, when we say you need to be healthy, we're always thinking about physical aspect of it. Like, have you had the right kind of food? Have you had the right kind of exercise? But no one really talks about mental health. And it's interesting today how there's a lot of propaganda that happens around mental health without people really understanding it. Or there's still that stigma where you can't really go see a counselor, and then you think something's wrong with you. You must be having like a serious problem. But if you have a headache, if you have a stomach pain, a leg ache, they'll be like, go to the doctor, go and get yourself some treatment. But nobody ever comes forward and says, go and get any sort of help because you're going through a particular struggle. Because I think in society, we're all kind of have this false notion that we all have to be strong or pretend to be strong, right? Which is where we don't go out and ask for help. It's okay for me to ask someone to pick a heavy bag, but I will not ask anyone to pick my baggage, right?
Right.
So counseling is very, very important, not because you have an issue, that's because it gives you a clarity, right? When you talk about your issues, when you talk about it, you realize there are multiple millions of people with multiple different, segments of issues that they're dealing with. But at the end, you kind of fall into the same bucket that we're all humans and go through this sort of journey. So coming out of it, talking about it, even if you are someone who's taking counseling in secrecy, just come out, talk about it, because it's very, very important. Because you might, very without your own knowledge, like you could be giving someone the strength to actually make a difference in their own life. And changing that does not just change the individual, but the entire family, because mental health really impacts not just an individual, but everyone around them. So it's so important to kind of focus on that mental well-being and taking care of your emotional state, your mental state, your spiritual state. All of those kind of come in. We don't really think about it that way, and we're more focused on our physical health.
True. So, I mean, when do you think that it is important that a person should seek for any emotional help?
At any point, right? The issue does not have to be big. The issue does not have to be something that you're going to think that there's going to be a huge impact. No, you need to seek any kind of help, right? You going and discussing with your best friend about something, that's a form of counseling, that's a form of therapy that you get, that's a form of outlet that you get. But when you know that your issues are very overwhelming, right, it's not just that it's come out of me, it's not just that feeling, right, when you know that it's beyond that. Even though I've spoken about it, even though I've had that emotional release out of my system, there's still something bothering me, I still can't be as functional as I used to be. That's the time you step in and get a support or help. But at all points in our lives, we all go through this, we just know that differently.
Absolutely. That is amazing. Actually, that's a very, very important point that we have to note, right? So generally we say, I have my bestie, I have my friend, I'm going to go and tell, and then I'll feel good about it. But there's something more to it that has to
Yes.
actually happen for you to come out of it and get a closure, isn't it? As a psychologist, right? So what is one emotional problem that many of them struggle in this generation?
It's acceptance. Right, we talk about it all the time, but honestly I think we all live in that immediate intense gratification that we all want, right? And to add to that, we have a lot of social media does that to us, right? Like, just go
Right.
on Insta, you can't probably put a reel more than 90 seconds, and it kind of shows what an amazing life you have in those 90 seconds, right? And even reels, like, you just keep watching, after 10 seconds you want to move to the next one. There's just so much of information that we get, so much of movement that's happening, that we don't have the time to process anything. It's like, think of it again at your physical body, right? You eat so much food when you're hungry so fast, and suddenly you realize that you're so full that you can't, like, get up from where you're sitting. That's exactly what happens to our emotional state, where you're suddenly feeling exhausted by doing nothing. But we don't realize that it's from all this intense gratification that we are feeling, because very unconsciously, subconsciously, we are getting this information that I don't have that life.
True. It's
Right?
always the best part
And
that's
like,
being
how
portrayed.
has this person, I knew this person differently, you start to become very judgmental. You start to look at life so differently, that everyone is having the best life while you are not.
True.
Right? So that's where I think it kind of really impacts that psychological status of individuals. It all starts at that you need to know where you come from and what is it that you can do in your life, rather than comparing yourself to anything that happens. It's not easy, but that's where the challenge comes. And I think that's where a lot of emotional support and counseling that we were talking about kind of steps in today's age and time. It's even more important and even more serious, because we all come from different backgrounds with different baggages that I was talking about, that could impact the way we are perceiving everything around us.
So, having said that, right, you've told about Instagram and the way it is changing the world and perception. So, have you come across an incident where, Instagram has actually changed somebody's life from good to bad? I don't know if I can ask this on a social media platform, but I really want to know if that is happening. So, has there been any instance that you've come across like that?
If you knew, a couple of years back, there was this game that kids were playing where, you know, uh, I think it was called Blue Whale.
Blue whale, yes,
Yeah.
blue whale, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's an example, right? Of, everyone's doing this craziness, let me do it. And the number of kids that lost their life, number of kids, that kind of really ruined the future, a beautiful future that they could have had, only because they wanted to do this. And today, when you look at even small things like PS5, it's no more an instrument that you put into your TV and you play, right? It connects you. It's also a social media that connects you to so many people. People get into things like betting, people get into things like gambling through those channels. We don't realize it when we gift these to our kids, right? We think, oh, it's a box that sits in my house,
And
it's a box. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
game they're
yeah.
playing, but they don't understand that it's a social media as well. We talk probably only about Insta, poor Meta, right? We only talk about Facebook or Insta, but there are a lot of small things that we expose our children to, not realizing the impact that we are causing to them, right? So there are a lot of kids that are impacted. I know a lot personally as well. Like I said, I won't be able to share those instances here, but yes, there's been a really sad incident as well that I know, where this really, really smart kid today even struggles with mere. He was such an outgoing kid. He was so fabulous in school. Today even struggles to just get up from bed and go to university that he is in,
Oh my
right?
God.
It's all because of that exposure. It's that damage that it's caused to him psychologically, uh, not realizing that all he was doing was playing a game.
Okay. That is really shocking, actually. So, I mean, now we are into the tech space, right? How will you actually put that line for kids telling that you are not supposed to cross this border? Because as far as the kids are concerned, like you said, they're just playing a game, and there are multiple people who are there and they're competing with them. They don't even know who they are on the other side, right? How will you actually say that this is the safe line, don't cross it?
That's where parenting comes in, right?
Mm.
That's where it becomes very important. So, just taking one step back, right? What is parenting really, right? The easiest thing is to become a parent.
Mm.
That's when the challenge starts. Like, if you have two kids, you probably are mostly, people are very protective about the first one. They're doing a lot of research. What's the right way of parenting? What are the best things that you can be? I want to do things that I didn't get. I want to be a parent that I never had. You come with those, a lot of those past experiences of yourself, and you're like, I will do this because these were the good things that happened to me. I will not do this because I think
Right.
this impacted who I could have been. Like, but what we forget in this process is you are a parent or you become a parent, and it's a journey that you're learning with that very first instance when you have your kid. There is no schooling that you can go to and say that this is the right thing to do.
Right.
You become a student for the first time when you have your first child, and that's when you also become a parent. The tag of mother and father, you have a kid, you're a mother, you're a father, but to be a parent, I think, is a lot more effort, right? And we talk a lot about unconditional love that you need to give your child, but what is that, right? What is unconditional love? Giving them everything they want, is that unconditional love? How do you show that, right? It's through that acceptance, is building that resilience in your children. A lot of times parents don't understand that you need to make your child anti-fragile, but at the same time ensuring that there's a development for their emotional quotient, right? That EQ is very, very important. So, what we do with our children is either give them everything they want or make them so strict, right? There are just very extremes that
Mm.
we take,
Mm.
and we try to parent within the comfort that we have,
Right.
right? But parenting is not the comfort that we have that we need to get our children, but understand what ground they are on.
Mm.
Is my child outgoing? Is my child shy? Is my child introvert? What kind of parenting should I give my child? Right? You're so exhausted as an individual doing a lot of different roles that we kind of put parenting in the end because they're like, they will learn. They are children. Like, they will learn, they will grow up, they will figure their own things out. We're doing well in life,
Right.
right?
Mm.
So, but parenting is really a lot of work in itself.
Mm.
And we as parents need to, or as the adults need, everyone's a parent, right? When, like, I'm a parent to a fur child, I'm a parent too. It's not a human with two legs, but it takes the same amount of discipline for me to make sure that my pet behaves in a certain way,
Right.
right? I can't do the same kind of training on this. We all are parents in our own ways because that kind of support that we do, or simple things like, hey, you're my sister from another mother. Why do we say that? Because of that connection, that we feel that we are the same, we have similar values,
True.
you know. And so your friend could be thinking of your mom has her own.
Mm.
Like, where does it come? Even though they are not their parents, right? That is parenting, right? That kind of acceptance, that kind of unconditional acceptance of that person
Mm.
is actually love. But at the same time, providing accountability to your child is very, very important,
Okay.
right? Providing consequences is important. You allow the child to do what they want to do, but you tell them the consequences. They can still go ahead and do that. That's how they will learn. That's how you're able to draw those borders.
Mm.
That's how you're able to, kind of tell them what happens when they make those choices,
Right.
right? Then that's where it becomes easy to draw those lines with your child. Because you could be a very strict parent, so they don't tell you what they're doing. You could be an over friendly parent where they're telling you everything, and now you're in a state where you don't know what to do. I've had, parents come to me and say, we wanted to be really good friends with our children, but today they're coming, my child's just in 6th grade, and she's coming and telling me things like, who she has a crush on, or how she wants to dress to school, because if guys like you, you're popular. These are all realities of today's world. And let's not be shy away from talking to her. And she's like, but I don't know what to do. If I'm going to be strict with this child, she's not going to tell me if she does something. But now I don't want to encourage her into this, because this is not the age to do this. Right? So parenting starts at the very base, and then it becomes, I'm not saying it's impossible, it just becomes harder. And again, when I say you need to spend time with your child, I don't mean every day you're spending like 1 hour with the child, just sitting and staring at them. No, that's not what it is, right? You spend couple of hours or couple of hours in one day of the week. No, just take your child out. Your child likes to eat ice cream. Just take your child out for a walk. Feed him that ice cream. You don't need to talk anything to her or him. That is spending that time, because they know that they are in a safe place doing what they like.
Right.
This is how you build that bond over time, and that's when they will start to open up. It's like trust, right? You don't make a best friend by someone standing at the bus stop. You don't be like, I think you can be my best friend today. We don't do that, right?
Right.
With time, we kind of get to know that person. We build that trust, and that's exactly what you need to do in parenting. Being friends with your children does not mean that they need to know everything about your life, or you need to know everything about their life. It's about building that trust, which will eventually kind of smooth into becoming one.
So again, having said that, right, what do you think are the pros and cons of traditional parenting versus modern day parenting?
Like I said in my previous conversation, that there's not really a traditional or a modern parenting, right? Today, we have a lot of access to information, right? Today, I don't really need to see just what my parents did to me, or what my grandparents did, or what my neighbors did, but I can also see parenting or read like millions of books available online, millions of YouTube videos available online, or even just follow a couple of reels, where uh, there are so many tips and so many things parents do. So there's a lot of information available in modern age. Traditionally, you didn't have that.
Right.
So what your parents did to you, you did to your child, and vice versa. At the max, if you're a working individual, you learnt it. But again, parenting, if you think about it, is quite conventional, right? In the sense, today, if you and your partner had a similar paying job, which most engineers, if you're engineers, then you go, and software engineers, you probably are getting similar salaries. But when you talk about parenting, we don't, and here I'm not talking about societal or gender roles, excuse me for this, but what I'm trying to say is, it's the mother that always thinks, my child's not getting enough time. I think I need to resign. I think I need to do something. So parenting is not a one-way door.
Okay.
Your parents together. So it's not how much you do as an individual, but how much you do as a group. Right? It's a group effort. And that is what traditional parenting missed. It's always the mother that's responsible. Anything goes wrong, you did not do this right.
Okay.
Right? Including the partner in traditional parenting, or if they did well, then it's both of us. What an amazing child we have. But I think in modern parenting, a lot of that is changing, where even the fathers are getting equally involved, if not more, right? Where I still think in a lot of societies, women, of course, have a much upper hand in this, but I think that is the difference. And it also becomes even more important, because the way our partners, at least in the society that we are in, they're trained quite differently when you look at the larger community, right? So they come in with their own set of ideas, while women are more progressive in that way. We want to be more progressive. Like, think of it, like our parents all, like our dads went to work, probably our moms didn't, but today both our children, both the parents are going to work. Even small changes, women have come forward to do and contribute a lot more than men did. They're doing sort of those traditional movements and tasks that they did even in the past. So that is the major difference, is that where men are not really taught how to parent, because it's the women's responsibility. They might be today giving you a hand, helping you, maybe today I work from home, I'll pick the child when you go to work, or vice versa, right? But those things did not happen in the past. But I think that's also a boon to technology, right? The kind of work that we do now, they have
Right.
more flexibility or anything. I think that's where it is. And also that in traditional parenting, there's only one thing: my child needs to be good, my child needs to study and get a good job. Today, I think in modern parenting, they're allowing the child to make their own decisions. And that's where also the challenge comes, right? Because till you're 20, a lot of parents I see today, they never say no to the child, which is where the problem begins, because they are so overwhelmed. They're like, I don't care, you want this, just get it and get off my back, right? And it's the reality of today's society. The problem does not happen when they're that age. The problem happens when they leave the nest. When they're 18, 20, go off to university or finish university, go to work. The world's not going to say yes to them all the time. Just like you never said no, the world's not going to say yes. That is when they haven't learned projection. That is where the problem begins. So it's actually more challenging to be a parent in this age than it was in the past, because there was not that much of openness or learning or understanding, because you lived in communities, kind of grew up in those communities. But today, the world is your community. It's no more, I live in RR Nagar or Malleshwaram or Bangalore or Delhi or, I don't know, Dubai, anywhere, right? The world is your community today. So the challenge becomes, what is it that I'm going to do differently so my child can be in any part of the world and still kind of assimilate into that society or community?
So say no is definitely a big fear these days, right? So for example, I have two sons, and saying a no and telling them, saying a no, sharing with people, and helping people. So three magic words they say, right? Please, sorry, and thank you. It just doesn't come. It is very difficult for them to come. But for us it was very easy, maybe because we were in a bigger community, we had many people, so giving and taking was a part of life. It was just another thing, that's all. It was not something separate. It is very difficult because when they grow up and when they go, if the manager is going to say no, your target, you've not achieved your target, they're not able to take pressure, because like how you said, right, you get everything very easily. So whatever it is, if you go and give also, you're supposed to be getting it. But unfortunately the world outside is not a bed full of roses, so you have the difficulties coming to children of aged between maybe 5 to 9 typically, right? They register a lot of things. That's when they are emotionally, they're getting stronger also, right? So they see a lot of things at home. These days parents, they don't actually fight in front of the kids, but those days it was not like that. So if there are a couple of incidences that actually is there in the child's mind, how will it be when how will it impact them emotionally or psychologically when they actually grow up? Does it have a long term impact on their self itself?
Yes. So that's why I've used the word baggages quite a lot, right? Because it's really, that's what we carry, right? We are what we are sold, right? Like I said, you can't put an apple seed and expect an orange to grow out of it. It's not going to happen. At the end of it, you need to know, like, our mind is plastic, right? Brain plasticity is a proven thing, that what you practice, what you see. When I say what is practice, basically doing something over and over again, right? And that's how you become perfect at it. So if a child is growing up in an abusive environment, right, and abuse doesn't have to be on the child. Fight is a form of abuse too, right? If they're constantly seeing it, they're, depending on the child's personality, they either have fear, they develop fear, they develop threat, they develop mistrust, they become suspicious individuals, right? These are all those unconscious sponge that they are replaying in their mind so many times that it's like practice, which becomes a part of their personality. Right? So as they become adults, you will start seeing it when they play similar roles.
So a child who's had a trauma, right, to actually name it, where the parents have been fighting, are you telling me that the child, when the child is a parent, will also do the same thing?
One, yes,
Mm-hmm.
okay, but it doesn't have to be in the same form,
Okay.
right? So when they are fighting, they probably will not necessarily will fight only with their spouse, but their reaction to things will be that of mistrust, will be that of fear, will be that of suspicion, right? So they develop these emotions that they could display.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be a mirror image,
Okay.
right? Not necessarily a mirror image, but it could be the personality they develop into. So anything that the spouse does, it'll be that of suspicion. Because what was the fight about in their family? Right? That's the key thing to know, that you and me will not know. The child probably will not know that if you ask them as an adult today, what were your parents fighting about?
Mm.
They don't know that, but it stemmed from some emotion, right? And that's the emotion that they gather. And that's the emotion they will. So they could be so protective
Mm.
that they could not allow their child to do anything. They could not allow their partner to go out and do anything
Okay.
because they have a mistrust to everything around them. So they want to be protective. So the way this thing comes out is going to be in different forms.
Mm.
So for them, it's like, I love you so much. I don't want you to go through what I went through. But what they don't realize is either it's suffocating the partner or it is suffocating the children.
Okay.
Like you develop those emotions. So it's very important to identify. I actually know cases of things where, children, when they grow up, they're like, even things that were not directly impacted by them, they're like, as a father, you mistreated my mother.
That was where I was coming to. Okay.
Yeah, as a father. So as an adult, I don't want to have any relationship with you. And I'm also so upset with my mother, even though she was a victim to that, that you didn't stand up for yourself. I don't want you around my child.
Hmm.
And these things happen quite often. Or when I was a child, because you wanted a comfort in your life, you sent me to an aunt's house, you sent me to hostel, you sent me, I don't know, to my grandparents. You were not there for me, and I don't want you to be there for me now.
Right. That is very common these days,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Child misbehaves, best thing for discipline is hostel.
Hmm.
Child misbehaves, send them to their grandparents' place, or to a strict uncle or to a strict aunt,
Right.
right? But are those with wrong intentions? No, they're not with wrong intentions. No parent, there is no bad parenting. There are no wrong intentions. But what is missing is understanding the personality of your child. Why is my child stubborn? Why is my child angry? It's an emotional state. It's very important to identify the root cause of it. It's behavior is only a final output. Behavior does not come first. It's the emotional state that comes first. If I'm angry, then I exhibit that anger in whatever form, throw something, beat something up, I don't know, break something, whatever. The exhibition of that behavior is the last output. You need to understand triggers. What is it that triggers that behavior?
But sometimes when a child is not very outspoken, like you said, leaving till 8 years or 9 years, right? So the child might not, he might be a very quiet, calm personality kind of a thing, kind of a child, right? So it is very difficult to actually understand what is going through the child's mind. So suddenly one day, for example, if you live in a society, these days society living, like, big society
Yeah.
livings are very common. So definitely there will be a fight. There is no, especially boys or girls or anybody, right?
Yeah.
So how you will, as a parent, you will have to actually involve in certain stage, and you should back out in certain, you should say
Correct.
that let them handle it themselves. So sometimes when you do that, the fight there also will be an outcome of something else.
Correct.
might be at home or might be anywhere in their
Yeah.
environment, right? So how do you actually handle that? Because it is, you cannot go, even if your child has made a mistake, you cannot let go of your child in front of others. At the same time, you cannot support the child completely also, then my child will think that, oh, anyway, my mother or father is going to come and tell me this only, so it's okay, I will do it. Is a very, very complicated situation where majority of the parents are in, right? How do you actually handle it? Do you just go upfront and scold the child in front of everybody and tell that this is wrong, you're not supposed to do that? Or sort of pacify the situation there and then come back home and then give your piece of advice or thoughts? Or how is it? It's very confusing.
So, in the same example that you gave, so whoever are the two people involved, it's never those two, right? It's always a crowd.
Right.
It's always the crowd, right? Either they're coming to pacify it, coming to enjoy the scene. It could be anything,
Right.
right? The best way to handle a situation like this, because one, of course, you take accountability for what your child has done. Okay. Two, you also have to build that trust with your child that they're there for them. And without understanding the situation, you're not going to blame either of the children, right? Because at the end of it, that child might not be yours, but our impact is also impacting another kid, right? So you need to take the parent or a supervisor, a caretaker, the adult of the child involved, and your child, go home, talk to them about the situation, and tell them you'll come back. It's okay. You need to do it as a process of investigation. Once the child leaves, you talk to the child and say, I heard both sides of the story. What has triggered it? And when you realize that probably your child was not at fault, you go back and talk to the parent of the other child and say, I did speak to my child. This is what it was. And this is how we can solve it, or this is what I think. This is the problem, that we think that our children are always right, and no one wants to hear that our child is wrong from some third person, right? This is how society has built in, where we don't feel that inclusiveness, that we are all responsible to build a healthy society. We just want to protect our own, while we need to know that if my neighbor is not protected, it's not a healthy environment for my child tomorrow, because it's the same adult that's going to grow up to be with my child. Right? So it's very, very important to know that inclusiveness, that parenting, like I said, is not just for your children. It's very important to build that healthy community, because your children are going to grow up in that community. After you, who is there? It's probably the same neighbor, or it could be another neighbor from another community that comes and forms that society for your child. So it's a collective engagement. It's a collective form of parenting that we need to do in building that very safe environment for our children, for today and for tomorrow.
Right. So when you say that, there are families who give into 10x, but they don't get 10x. So that time the child is definitely demotivated, isn't it? How do you handle that? It's very difficult.
So that is where you, as a parent, talking to your child about certain things that are age appropriate becomes very, very important. Today, I know, like, every kid wants to have like a really amazing birthday party because their friends had, they want to have amazing, gifts. They're like, oh, my friend, I don't know, gave me like maybe a Lego game, so I need to give something bigger. That's because we have shown our children that materialistically, if you grow, is when you're successful. That's where the building of the emotional quotient comes into being, that we are happy and satisfied with what we have because of the consequences that we have. Taking away that Lego from you, if your friend did not give you, what difference does it make in your life? If it didn't make any difference in your child's life, that's what they need to understand. Right? So kind of explaining what is friendship, what is celebration, becomes more important. While I understand those are the challenges of modern parenting, right? That if I don't do this, then my child is going to think I'm not doing well enough. I'm not doing. This is where it becomes important for your child to know and build that emotional quotient. The moment the child's emotional quotient is strong, these things will not affect them. If they're not emotionally strong, that's when, because Emotionally strong individuals usually have higher um, value for self. Their self
Mm.
esteem is quite high in emotionally matured individuals compared to the ones that don't have a very high emotional quotient. They usually are either low on self esteem or overly superior on self esteem, right? There is no balance, and that's where it causes all of the issues that we see. And that's where it's the off balance that you see where people go astray.